Welcome. You're watching Rugby with Rifle, a podcast about all things rugby and life, with your host, Danny Pabone and Rifle Scudder.
Welcome to another episode of Rugby with Rifle. In this episode, we are joined by a very special guest, Justin Smith. In episode 10 of this podcast, and please go watch that episode if you haven't already, I took a drive down to Richmond, Virginia to go visit Rifle for a weekend. This occurred the weekend before Thanksgiving here in the US of 2024. On the Sunday of that weekend, I had the privilege of going to a rugby clinic for kids conducted by Justin and a few other of his fellow coaches. Now, in preparation for this episode, Justin shared with me that he sends an email at the beginning of the season to all the parents of the players that are going to play for him that season. And within this email, there is a contract. And on the top of that contract, there is the quote, "In the arena of rugby, greatness is not found in avoiding challenges, but in embracing them." What a powerful quote. As you know, this podcast is not only about the game of rugby, it is also about the life lessons that we can learn from watching and playing the game of rugby. So with that, the episode is going to begin with a short clip of that rugby clinic for kids, followed by a conversation with Justin Smith. So enjoy the rugby clinic clip and enjoy our conversation with Mr. Justin Smith. And as Rifle just wonderfully told me, is you want to practice passing in both directions. As you can see now, they're doing running, passing drills. As we explained before, it's very important that the player with the ball have their teammates right behind them. Just as everybody can see, there are also girls here in this clinic. Rugby is a sport for girls and boys. Another drill is the running in straight line, passing the ball to the left and right. And as you learned before, when you score a try, you have to touch the ball to the ground. If the ball does not touch the ground, there's no try. So right here, again, they're practicing a drill. In the game of rugby, it's very important to communicate. And like I've said before, communication and keeping up with your teammates is very important in the game of rugby. So continue to do drills where players follow each other and pass to each other. Again, I can't stress enough. Communication and staying with your teammates is a big part of the game of rugby. So in this drill, Coach Justin is teaching the boys to stay together on defense. As Rifle just explained to me, when you're on defense in rugby, you want to be in a straight line, and when that happens, you don't have any gaps or holes in your defense. So in this drill, they're doing arm circles. And the reason for that is you want to always have strong shoulders in rugby. So this helps loosen your shoulders, helps building your shoulders as well, because rugby, when you tackle, first thing you want contacting is your shoulders. Because remember, in rugby, you cannot tackle high. You have to tackle low. And the best way to tackle is leading with your shoulder.
Okay, good day, everyone, from wherever you are watching. It might be morning, afternoon, or night. Who knows where this podcast is finding itself? But today, Danny and I have the great honor. We've got a guest, Mr. Justin Smith, who's a coach for Richmond Strikers Rugby here in Richmond, Virginia. And my son played for him and in the club that he coaches. So thought it would be good just to have someone who's very involved locally in the rugby scene and knows exactly what is going on. You know, did a lot of courses, certifications, keeping up with the certifications, continuing rugby education and all of that. So literally in the thick of things here with rugby in America. So just welcome Coach Justin to the program.
Thanks, everyone. It's great to be here. Excited to talk about rugby today.
Right.
Oh, yes. Welcome, Justin. Thank you for being here. It's going to be a great episode, and I appreciate you taking your time and being here with us. So, with that, I would love for you to share your journey on how you just came to playing rugby. I know you had mentioned in preparation for this episode, you are a multi-sport athlete growing up. So you've played various sports. So, and I think, Rifle, you had mentioned of how you just mentioned shortly, he didn't give me the whole story, but you, if I'm not mistaken, Rifle had mentioned to me how you came to playing rugby. So yeah, I would like to, I think people will be interested to just know a little bit of your journey to playing the game of rugby.
So it was interesting. It was around 2003. A buddy of mine played for, I think, then the Blues, and they had a practice here in Richmond for the local rugby team. And he said, "Hey, Justin, you should come out and play rugby. You're a big guy, 6'2", 230. You should give rugby a look." I said, "Man, I don't know anything about rugby at all." And in my mind, it was a violent sport. It was football without pads, and football is pretty much a collision sport. And I was like, well, this is just for crazy people. Like it's insane. So he said, well, you don't really have to do anything except be able to tackle and drink beer. It's like, what? Yeah, I can do that. All right, I'm in. So I showed up at practice the first week and absolutely fell in love with the game. It was fantastic. It was honestly nothing like I thought it would be. It was much more controlled. It's not just the chaos, and I understand how it can look like that if you don't know the rules. But it is very much, there's a game plan involved. Everybody has their own part of that game plan to carry out. You know what it is, going there, but you have to be able to, react and think on the fly. So it's a very cerebral game. You don't have the coach calling in plays for you. Each of the players have to know what's going on at any given time and where they should be and what the next role is. And if someone's not there, you have to be able to adjust and fix that. So it is an intelligent game. And that's really what got me involved. Since then, I played for the Lions for about 6 years, then on and off a little after that. My son, when he was 3, we went to a coaching clinic, and they were looking for a coach. And they had known me from my playing days. They said, "Ninja, you should play, or you should coach." I said, "I don't know anything about coaching. It's not my jam. I was just here to have my son check it out." And they kept on and kept on. I think it was mostly like most parents, it's just there was nobody else to do it. So I said, all right, in order to make sure that my son has the opportunity to play the game that I love, there's got to be a coach. I'm having to learn how to do that. And so since then, man, I've been involved in rugby for better part of 2 decades now. I've been a coach for 9 years. I played for the 6+ years prior to that. I'm a level 200 certified referee, so I go up to New York. I just helped referee the largest rugby tournament in North America called the Can-Am Games. So between Canadian and Canada and America, I was at New York Sevens. So I do a lot of different refereeing and have for about 3 years now at a pretty high level. And then I am a certified judicial officer for USA Rugby. I think I'm one of only 6 in the country, last I checked. So if the laws are broken, you get a red card. There's something that needs to be, adjudicated to see if you need to be suspended or what type of other penalties need to be involved. I'll either be the kind of the judge or sometimes the prosecutor for that, depending on what it looks like. Involved in in Rugby Virginia here. I am the disciplinary chair for Rugby Virginia, formerly was serving as the vice president. So, if there's anything I can do to continue to further rugby, I really try to get involved and make sure that opportunity that I didn't have when I was little is there for kids now, specifically for youth. It is such a great game. And the best part about it is the sportsmanship that is applied in rugby. When you play other sports, and you mentioned it earlier, I played several sports in high school. I played basketball, I played baseball, I played soccer. In rugby, it's different. You're all rugby athletes afterward, and it doesn't matter what happened on the pitch. Afterwards, everybody is friends. You see somebody in a restaurant or something like that, they're wearing a rugby shirt. You're instantly fans. You're instantly friends. If there was an altercation on the pitch afterwards, you bring the guy Gatorade and you shake hands and, you talk to each other afterward. The home team always takes the away team, to their local restaurant, make sure that they have food and drink for the trip back. Like it's such a fantastic culture that doesn't exist in a lot of other American sports. And for kids to learn that at an early age, I think, will help them not only in the sports arena, but also in their professional jobs and careers afterward, with how to really relate to other individuals and how to find the positive in anything, and that you're all on the same team working toward the same goal. And you're just not going to find that in most other sports to that degree.
I remember the very first time that I took Nathan, my son, to check out rugby here in America and see if he could play. We had an advert that came across an email, I don't know where. So we went out and Justin was coaching. So he says to the boys, they're sitting down, and he explains the rules of rugby, and, you never run out of bounds. You got to pass back and all those kind of things, the ABCs, Rugby 101. And then at one stage he says, listen carefully, but I promise you can hear his voice all around the whole field. He doesn't have to make it loud. He says, this is not soccer. In rugby, you obey the ref. And many times the ref will get it wrong, and that's okay. You still obey. The ref tells you to, pack up your stuff and move 10 meters back for penalty. You don't backchat. You don't ask questions. You turn around and you walk your 10. I turned around. I said to Tiffany, my wife, I said, I like this club. Nathan will be playing here. This is what I'm looking for in a rugby team. This is exactly it. Because in many other, and you mentioned soccer there, Justin, but I mean, you can see in the NFL now as well, and players come off the field with an attitude. They slap their helmets down, they break their helmets, and I've got my son watching that. I don't want him to pick that up. That's just something that I don't want my boy to see and say, that's my hero, and he can't control his emotions. He can't look after himself. Now he's letting the coach down, the team down, the other players. I mean, it's out of control the way these guys go on, come off, shout at one another, fight with each other next to the field, the same team. And as you said before, that just does not happen in rugby. If a team, however, does have issues with one another, they will sort it out on the practice field and before the game. And all teams, I mean, international teams have toss-ups and they have issues with one another, but there's a way of dealing with that. And you do that where no one else is seeing, so that when you get on the field, you have one vision, you one team, and you have one mind. And that is another brilliant thing about rugby. So when I heard that, this is not soccer, you will obey, I was like, okay, this is where we'll be playing from now on. So that was good.
And that's the thing about rugby, and I tell the kids all the time, is rugby does not have names on the back of the jersey. You don't get your last name like every other sport where it's, about you and people can identify you. We don't play for the name on the back of the jersey. We play for the name on the front of the jersey. And it's more important to win as a team than it is to score that try on your own. And so you have to be able to run in support, and you have to be there. Even if you're not involved in the play yet, you could almost immediately be involved in that play by putting yourself in a position to support your teammates. And then often there's the people who score the tries. So it's a very, very selfless game. You have to be able to play for the team and not for yourself. And if you do, you'll succeed. If you have individuals who are only interested in carrying the ball on their own, or showing their athletic prowess without taking the team into account. Not only are you going to hurt the team, but those are the types of players I sit. I mean, I have some very, very athletically gifted kids that I've coached over the 9 years, and some of them were not about playing a team sport. And so, I had to readjust and kind of get them to the point where they were playing team sport. And if they had the team first at the beginning, they would have been a starter. But I had to wait until we developed that to where I could put them in a place not only to succeed on their own, but then have the team succeed. And you just don't see that in a lot of other sports. I mean, you look at basketball and you've got that one star who can run the court from, one side to the other with very little help from a team. In rugby, you can't do that. It's a team sport, and it has to be that way.
Yeah. When we first started this podcast, I had told the rifle, before learning about rugby and a league that we have mentioned before, that's currently in development, a professional league in the United States. I had heard of rugby, being an avid sports fan, but when I actually sat down and watched my first full match, I was like, what in the world is going on here? I'm like, all I see is men pushing each other, tackling each other. I was like, okay, I have no idea what's going on here. But I started learning real fast, like you two gentlemen have just mentioned. I was like, wow, this is truly a team sport. And I found out really quick that, if one player tries to stand out and say, hey, I'm the best, that's not gonna, go well with the rest of the team and the
Right.
coaches.
It really
So,
ends up
yeah,
hurting the team.
yeah, yeah. And it's very, very interesting. Now, I'm not used to being accustomed to American sports. I'm not used to that.
Even now in today's game, if you look at what you call the best, you can take players like, let's take Anton Dupont, who many people say could be the best player, in the world right now. If you take Pieter Steph de Toy from South Africa, who won, International Player of the Year. If you take these players and you look at them, even though they are the best in the world at what they do, they're not cocky, they're not arrogant, they are some of the most humble guys that you would meet. And if there's ever a post-game interview, or people ask them to be on a sports program or a podcast and they talk about them, you will 99% of the time hear them say, the team did this, that's why I could score. The team did this, the coach helped us do this, we got together. It's not like other sports where, I kick that guy, I'm so good, I practice so hard, I throw 300, balls into the basket every day after practice, that's why I'm the best. You won't hear that in today's current rugby stars, who are absolutely the GOATs in their positions and how they play, ever say, I practice 2 hours more than the other guys, that's why I'm there, and I wake up at 5 and I eat 6 extra eggs a day of my protein. No, it's always the team. And that's, even to this very day, very, very alive in rugby. It's about the team and not about the individual.
Right. And it's the teams that all do that is the ones who succeed. You can have one player doing that on their own and your team's not going to be any better off. But it's the motivating and getting everybody else involved. And hey guys, I'm going for a 6 a.m. run. Who wants to meet me? And you're all going out. And it's not just practice. I tell the kids, like, look, I can teach you tactics all day long on Mondays and Wednesdays. I can teach you about the finer points of rugby. You know what I can't do? I can't improve your fitness in 2 days. That's something you have to do on your own. And so it's something that, is a very big community as far as driving that want to succeed and that athletic ability to, to get better, is because you count on your teammates to have that same drive. And if they don't, it's obvious on the pitch who does and who doesn't, but it's you're bringing everybody up. You're not focusing on what you're doing. You're focusing on what you can do to bring your teammates up, with you, and make sure you're all doing the same thing at the same level of fitness. And that's how you succeed.
I remember when playing rugby, after the hardest practice session there was, We would all have to line up on the try line, and then we would have to hold hands, and we would have to run to the other try line and just do that multiple times. And what you would do is the faster guys would obviously stand on the outside, and then they'd take the guys who were slower and stand them in the middle so that they could pull from the outside and help these guys just a little, because you had to get over the line at the same time. So it wasn't, for example, a winger, 11 or 14 or fullback who's so fast. Just, okay, the coach blows a whistle and they go, and you've got a prop who's like, 150 kilograms who can't run that fast. So he's 10 meters behind. That wasn't allowed. You all had to cross the line at the very same time, or you would do it again. And that's just one of the things about rugby is, you make a plan. So all the quick guys stand on the outside. You hold the guys who are battling or a little slower in the middle so that you can pull them from the outside. But I mean, growing up playing the game, that was just normal to me. I didn't have to learn that. I wasn't taught that. I didn't look at another sport and realize, oh my goodness, you guys don't do that. That was just the way we grew up because of rugby. And everything was a team mentality, which is lacking today in so many sports, unfortunately, because it's such an important thing in life today to be able to be whatever, at work, your environment, you church, you got to be one team. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. But you learned that, from 4 or 5 years old at rugby to do that without someone telling you, this is why we're doing it. This is the reason. It's just, this is what we do. This is who we are. This is how this game works. And that was just burnt into your subconscious, that this is about the other 14 on the field and the 8 guys sitting on the side. When I played, we didn't have the 8. We didn't have the bomb squad. We didn't have the reserves on the side like that. We had 1 or 2. But it's about the guys on the field and the guys that are going to come on, if you hurt yourself or so on. So that's another great thing about the rugby, is just growing up with that mindset of team.
Right. And you'll see that in the opening clip there where the kids even exercises. We all come across the same time. You should be looking to your left, looking to your right, seeing how everybody's doing the lunges and the flick kicks and the butt kicks all the way across while we're warming up. We're doing it together. And using, the star mentality as an example, you could have the fastest guy on the pitch. And if you're not all playing straight in a row on defense and he's running up on his own to try to tackle somebody, he might be the fastest and he might be the best tackler. But you know what he did when he ran out without his team? He left a hole there in the defense. And almost every single time somebody scores a try, almost every time, it's because there was a hole left because somebody wasn't with their team, meaning the rest of the team either wasn't looking to make sure if they were all together, or somebody was up on their own because they thought they could make this tackle without playing as a team. They could do it on their own. You make that miss or they make that pass right before, and then that's how they're through. So it's you have to play together. Doesn't matter what your individual athleticism is. It matters what your athleticism as a team is. And so everybody has to come up together on defense, and that's how you keep the other team from scoring. I'm a very, very defensive heavy coach. I really, really preach defense and make sure we're all at the same place at the same time. We're working to get to our spot in the defense, and then we rest. We don't rest getting there. We run quick. We get on defense, and then we'll wait until the ball is coming to us while moving with everybody else. That's when you walk. But the best defensive teams are the teams that win. It's the ones who try to play, like football or soccer, where you're spread out. You're not going to be able to stop the other team from scoring that way. There's just too many different directions they can run and angles.
So continuing with this topic of rugby truly being a team mindset culture, and being that you've been heavily involved on the coaching side of rugby over the past 9 years or so, how do you see the growth of rugby over these past 9 years? How do you see the growth of rugby and the popularity and everything in this country, in America? How do you see that going?
So everybody is really working together in the rugby community, which is fantastic. If, for example, the USA South Panthers are playing in Richmond against the Capital Union Selects this Saturday. And I reached out to the head coach of the Panthers and said, hey, I'm a local coach. Can I come by and watch practice? He said, no, we'd love to have you. He gave me his cell phone number. We've been texting back and forth. And just to give you some perspective on who that is, the USA Rugby South Panthers is what USA Rugby was before there was USA Rugby. It was essentially the national team before we had a national team. So this is a very high level of rugby. A lot of these, players are the best of the best in their unions, and some of them may go on to represent us at the Olympics. I mean, it's very high level. But it's everybody helping everybody at every level. When I'm currently working on my level 200 certification for coaching. And it's something that we had people fly in. It was in DC, and there were people from Wisconsin and New York and Pennsylvania and Virginia, all over the place. And some of the coaches that were there are coaching for the new women's professional Premier League, or some coaches from there. So, but it's myself only coaching right now at the U12 level as far as a coach goes, and other people who are literally coaching at the professional level, and we're all learning how to advance the sport and working with each other, handing out, contact information. If you have any, questions, comments, concerns, let me know. Sharing drills. Some of the drills that I did, some of the national teams said, hey, some of the professional teams said, this is great. We're going to take that back. And the same thing, I learned a lot of great drills there that we'll be implementing at my level. But it is such a tight-knit community where everybody is wanting to see everybody else's success. Because the entire sport succeeds when we do well in front of those who don't understand the game yet. So it's really advancing. You just reach out to other coaches and other teams. Hey, there's this thing happening here in Richmond. The local Major League Rugby team is going to be in town putting on a clinic. You reach out to all the coaches and see if anybody wants to go, because they may be your competition during the year, but you want all the coaches to get better, and you want the level of rugby to get better, and you want the kids to have the opportunity, to represent even your state at, some of these higher level events. And nobody is hiding the secret sauce or trying to keep anything from anybody else. I want to succeed, maybe at the cost of some other teams. It's, you really want the sport as a whole to succeed, because there is that sportsmanship involved, and you realize that everybody is better for having been involved in the sport. And as the sport gets better, we all get better with it.
What do you see, Justin? Because as you mentioned in the beginning, the Rugby World Cup coming to America in 2031 is going to be here, which we are just so excited about, and just literally counting down the days. We can't wait.
What did you say, Rifle? That you're going to buy a good tent and ride your motorcycle all over the country, right?
There we go. Every game, I'm telling you. But do you think rugby will grow also because of America and the rugby clubs and the union and whoever's involved in rugby pushing out everything they possibly can to make the game bigger and better, so that by 2031, so many more people will be playing, so many more people will have an understanding of the game, and so many people will be wanting to go, not just watch on TV, but actually attend the game and go to a game. Do you think that is happening or going to happen, or what do you see in lines of that?
Well, I really think it's the youth game that is growing it in the country. Like I said, when I was little, I didn't have the opportunity to play rugby. It didn't exist for my age group here. I didn't find it until I was about 23. But there's so many more kids who start playing it early and fall in love with the game that they want to go to the next level. They want to play in high school. They want to play in college. My son's already talking about how he wants to play for Old Glory and wants to play for the USA, Eagles, which is, a lofty goal. But, these aren't things that kids would have set for themselves 20 years ago, because it just didn't exist. So with as many, youth sport programs as there are now, you have kids growing up in this culture who know the sport, who want to succeed. And now you're getting some of these really great athletes who may not have, looked at rugby previously, are involved now at the higher levels. There are even a lot of recruiting efforts at the Major League Rugby level where they go look at, really great athletes that played, football or lacrosse, wrestling, who didn't actually make it in the NFL or, at the Major League level at whatever sport they were playing, and say, hey, you're a phenomenal athlete. Let's teach you rugby. You look at Perry Baker, who played for the USA Eagles in sevens. He was a track star. He was a sprinter. And so they went and got some of the fastest guys who weren't maybe running track elsewhere and taught them the game of rugby. And he is now the leading try scorer for the United States in U.S. rugby history. Just recently retired. My son's favorite player. Is very, very sad to see him retire. But I think, attracting these other athletes from other sports, and teach them the game of rugby, and having these kids who have grown up in the game is something that's really, helping bring it to a broader audience. It used to be when I played, you would have maybe some friends and family come and check it out. And now you can go to a rugby game and there are people who are not even associated with the club. They've heard about rugby and there's a rugby game and they want to come see it. What is the sport? And then they'll get involved. And, it's a lot cheaper to be a season ticket holder for a Major League Rugby team than it is to be, an NFL team or something like that right now. So it's a great way to spend time with family. Everybody can be involved. We've got a women's league for high school starting up here, hopefully this summer here in Virginia. So it's really broadening, those who are invested and excited about the sport. And most of the time it's just because they hadn't heard of it before, or they had heard of it, but they don't know what it was. When I started playing, I thought it was, very violent. Now I'll talk to parents, say, hey, I coach rugby. You should get your kid to come out and play. And they're like, I don't know. It's pretty dangerous. It's like, it's actually not. It's safer than the NFL. It's safer than football because the way you tackle, you're responsible for the safety of the individual you're tackling. There's so many rules about how you can tackle and how high you can be, making sure there's no head-to-head contact, making sure you're returning the ball carrier safely to ground, that you're going to ground with them. None of these shoulder charge tackles you'll see in football where you can just take somebody out of the air. In rugby, you have to have your feet on the ground and it has to be a very controlled, tackle. And it's a safer sport, honestly, all the way around. I got more concussions playing soccer than I ever did in rugby. And honestly, the reason I got the first 2 concussions in rugby is because I was wearing a crappy mouth guard. Once I got a good mouth guard, I was fine. I never had another one again. And so I can, pass that information on to the parents. And I've not had that be an instance in 9 years that I was coaching. I think I saw one kid get his bell rung. And it turned out not to be a concussion. It's a much safer sport. But it's really just getting people, getting the sport in front of them and getting them familiar with rugby and kind of the safety mechanisms that are involved in the sport. And then a lot of kids try it out. I've got a bunch of parents and kids who used to play football and they're now playing for me. One, because it's more exciting. I mean, you're a linebacker, you're a offensive lineman, defensive lineman. You don't do anything except block. In rugby, we had a kid last year who came over. He was an offensive lineman. That was his job. And he ended up being one of our premier ball carriers and try scorers. And he never got that opportunity before because everybody gets that opportunity in rugby. So there's a lot more opportunity to do a little bit of everything while play to your strengths as well. And it's just, there's not another sport like it. You have everybody from a really, really tiny guy. I mean, one of the smallest people you've ever seen, and he can be a scrum half, and he's fantastic at it. And you need somebody that small, almost kind of disappear behind the scrum, but you need those big guys as props, and then you need the tall, lanky guys as your loose forwards, or sometimes your locks. And there's a position for everybody in every body type, and so it's not exclusionary. There's no particular size of person that will succeed more than anybody else on a professional level. It's all about drive. You're wanting to succeed, how much effort you're going to put into it, and then playing as a team player. There's not another sport like it.
I think there is a big misconception about the dangers of rugby. Maybe people have watched, without knowing it, maybe they've watched rugby league. Mm-hmm. Maybe they've watched Aussie rules, which is holy smokes for crazy people.
That's insane. Yeah.
And they've watched that. And because the name rugby is associated with that, I mean, I will not even play that game. And I've done some wild things in my life. But if anyone has seen that and they're like, it's too dangerous.
Right.
And I was saying when we started this group of ours, with investing and so on in the rugby, the very first practice that I ever went to, like 5-6 years old, in Afrikaans now, because I'm from South Africa, went to Afrikaans school. They said in rugby, you use your head not to use your head. So when you tackle someone, you will never, ever use your head to hit or touch any of their body parts. You won't hit your head on their head or on their shoulder or anything. you go down, you hit with a shoulder, and your head is on the other side of the leg. So when you push the guy down, you cannot get hurt at all. And when you tell people that, that's such a misconception of, like you say, just watch the game. Or I think many times they watch a different form of rugby, and wow, this is just and it's no, like you say, it's safer than football, less blood, less concussions. Oh my goodness, yeah, I don't even want to talk about the football and things that happen there these days, and it's shocking plays that happen there and taking out guys, and it's just good lord that so rugby is very safe.
Yeah.
It's actually the tackling portion and the safety that it has been attracting the most kids I've seen. Either they come from a background where their parents have played rugby before and they'll come play for me, or it's the people who used to play football or still do. They'll spend one season with me learning how to tackle. And at U12, it's the first year that you tackle. It's the first age group. Prior to that, it's two-hand tap. And we spend the first 2 months on tackling. That's just about it. Almost nothing else except for tackling for 2 months. And it is, where your head goes, you hit with your shoulder, you wrap up, try to bring their knees together, and you fall on top of the person that you're tackling, to kind of preserve you. Now the person going down, we teach them how to fall. Here's how you want to go down, preserve the ball, preserve yourself. Don't try to catch yourself with your wrist. That's how you're going to break it, But there's a lot of safety involved at the beginning. There's a tournament called Ruggerfest in North Carolina, and a lot of the kids have been asking if we could go that. And I said, I will not take you there. U12, U14, I think we'll go, but U12, other kids in the nation have been tackling since 10. You guys have not. I want to get at least a good year, 2 years of you guys learning the proper technique and how to tackle before I put you in that type of situations. But the ones who played football, they said they were second, third string in the depth chart. They spent one season with me learning how to tackle properly, and they were the first in the depth chart. Their football coaches were, talking about, where did you learn how to tackle? How did you get so, efficient at tackling and bringing the guy down and safely too? They're not leading with their helmet. They're not leading with their head. It's a high degree of success as well as a high degree of safety. And they're like, well, I learned playing rugby. And you'll hear some of the other parents go up like, where's that? And I've got 3 kids this year who are playing for me who heard from friends that played football and they learned how to tackle correctly. And now they're with me and they're learning how to, tackle correctly and effectively and efficiently and safely. And they can bring that back to other sports. But I've had some who came over from football, and after 2 years of rugby, they're like, I don't want to play football anymore. Rugby's it. This is all I'm playing. It's a better sport. It's a safer sport. And again, I keep going back to the community and the sportsmanship. You're just not going to find anything like that in any of the other sports. It's built into the culture of rugby. And when it's not like that, it is immediately squashed. To give you an example, I was a certified judicial officer for a hearing for a team in Ohio. And at the end of that, because the parents were screaming at the referee the entire match, and it was awful. You see that in other games. You don't see that in rugby. I ended up suspending the head coach for 5 games. I suspended the assistant coach for 2 games. I suspended one mom of one of the players for a year. She wasn't allowed to come back for another year. I fined the club $500. I made them create a field marshal program where they had to, bring parents under control. It was just the most egregious form of referee abuse I'd ever witnessed in rugby. But you compare that to what you see in a normal, I keep going back to football. It's collision sport, a normal football game, and that's just typical. It's what you see over there. Yeah. In rugby, it is not. It is very much a game of respect. You respect your opponents, you respect the fans, you respect the referee, you respect the coaches, because really nothing screaming at anybody is going to change anything other than other people's opinion of you. And that's something that I address with the kids and the parents right up front every year is, we will be the most well-respected team in the state because we are going to treat other people with respect and win or lose. And it's a culture thing is huge. It's so much of intertwined part of rugby, which is why I really enjoy it.
Yeah. I think part of the whole culture of rugby, when we first started this podcast, and I was just going to different websites, just trying to acquaint myself with the game of rugby and try to learn as much as possible. I went to various websites, and depending on which website you went to, in America, I just thought before doing this research, I was like, how many fans or followers of rugby are there in America? That was one of the questions I had. So I was thinking maybe 10, 15, 20 million tops, and most of them are probably foreigners, people from other countries where rugby is big. But I found that number to be about roughly on average, depending on what website you went to, 50 million people here in America that either played or followed the game of rugby. I was shocked. I was like, 50 million. I didn't think it was that high, if those numbers are accurate. And I think it's like you two gentlemen have just mentioned over the past 15, 20 minutes, it's the culture of the game that people are really, really looking for in sports. People are getting tired of, especially parents, they're getting tired of their kid getting hurt in other sports, frequently. And they're just getting tired of, can you imagine you're a parent at a football game with a bunch of, 8 to 10 year olds, and you see a fight between parents, which I've seen.
Little League Baseball.
I'm like,
These
oh,
things
come
are always
on.
on the news. Little League Baseball. You got 7 and 8 year
Yeah.
old players, and the parents are next to the field slugging one another. It's crazy, man.
And it's just amazing. I'm like, wow. I mean, I can't believe it. And I've seen it with my own eyes in person. Certain games where parents get into it, maybe not punching each other, but cursing at each other, yelling at each other. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe what I'm seeing here.
If
So,
that ever happened on a team that I was coaching, I would refund the child's money and tell them that this was not the sport for them. That it
wow.
was that's just completely unacceptable. Maybe accept them back the year after if they want to sit out for a year. But even at a club level, at my own team, I wouldn't have to wait for disciplinary action for anybody else. It's not done. It is not done. And I would excuse them, refund their money, and tell them this isn't it. Obviously you want to work with some parents, to bring them into the rugby culture, because not everyone's used to this. You're an American sports fan. It's not something that you see exemplified anywhere else. And so there's a little bit of bringing them into that culture, which is why as a coach, you have to have that conversation with your parents and your players at the beginning of every season. Hey, let me help you understand some of the expectations that we have. Since you had copied that contract that I have everybody sign, and certain values that we hold, and what I expect of players and parents as far as their behavior goes. But it's just you don't see that in rugby, nor should you. You shouldn't see it in other sports, but for whatever reason, it's allowed. I'd hate to say expected, but like it's almost not shocking when you see it happen. In rugby, it would be a completely different story. You see that happen, and you're appalled.
Yeah. And I think that's from just from a parent perspective. I'm sure parents of your players appreciate that. The whole team culture of, hey, this is about respect, where rugby is a tough sport. It's very physical, but and every once in a while it may get heated,
Sure.
but it's not going to get to the point where it's disrespectful. At the end of the game, you shake hands, good game, good tough game, and there's still respect there.
Right.
So that's a whole, and I think that's part of. I'm guessing why, I'm sure, and that's one thing I would like for you to speak upon is with the contract that you sent email to parents at the beginning of the season. I'm wondering how do because you make the parents sign it. I believe you had told me, right? So
Yep.
how do parents react to if it's their first time with their kid playing with you? How do parents react to that? I'm curious to find out.
So a lot of them are excited, because it's again, a lot of people who play sports when you're young are not going to play at a professional level. It's not. It's for enjoyment. You're learning how to play the game. You're having fun with friends. That's really what it's about. I try to put people in that position to succeed if that's the case. But we're there to not just learn how to play as a team, but we are trying to become better people as a result of playing. The kids better result have played. The vision that I put on that contract is to see young men and women become future generational leaders who contribute to society and the world. The mission is to utilize the sport of rugby to build quality character in young men and women who have the skills and tools necessary to succeed on and off the pitch. A lot of what you learn, the values and characteristics of rugby is something that you can take with you into your work career, later on. But it's their values there that are important. And I really work with the parents of the kids. I tell them at the beginning, hey, sometimes there's going to be something that happened at school, or, a kid is going to have an off day, or, there's stress elsewhere that I'm not aware of. I don't need details, but keep me aware of that. I try to change my coaching strategy even day to day from, today, should it be correction and critique, or should it be really highlighting what you did well? Kid will have a tough day and they'll need that. Hey, you did a great job at this. Let me highlight what you did here. Let me put you in a position to be, held up and show everybody what you did correctly, so that you have that positive reinforcement. And so you get a lot of that type of coaching as a coach, trying to teach you how to, play correctly in front of the kids, with the kids, how to, work well for them. But it's, the values that I really instill upon the kids are, it's integrity, passion, solidarity, discipline, and respect. And you'll see that out there in the World Rugby. If you go to their website, there's the same values that rugby is really tied to and cannot be separated from, nor should it be. And it's important. I mean, rugby is a team sport. If you don't have that integrity where you're doing what you're supposed to be doing all the time, there's one referee on the pitch and there's 30 guys. They're not going to see everything, but you have to have the integrity to play the game correctly. You need that passion. You have to be able to, work hard even when you're not the one with the ball. You've got to run in support, even though you're right next to it and you didn't make the tackle. You've got to seal that ruck to make sure that your team gets the ball. You have to have that passion to work hard. I tell the kids all the time, if you're standing still, you're what? And they'll say, not doing your job. That's right, because there's never a time you should be standing still in rugby. There's always something you can be doing to help the team succeed. Solidarity is something that we're all playing for each other. We're not playing for ourselves. Discipline to make sure that you've got that work ethic and unwavering focus on those goals of winning and playing as a team. And then respect, again, it's really the bedrock of the game. I keep going back to it, but it's honoring others, fostering mutual appreciation, creating an atmosphere of inclusivity, camaraderie, respect for your opponents, your teammates, and referees. It's just that those values are integral to the part of the game, and it's preached not just at a local level, but again, World Rugby. You can go to their website, and even from there all the way down, this is what rugby is about, and this is the type of players that we develop, and then people to be successful outside of that. On my LinkedIn, I work in law. I'm a compliance advisor. And so I even just put a post out there kind of comparing what I learned about in rugby to the compliance field, and kind of brought that from a professional perspective and put that out there for anybody to, kind of take a look at. But it's the values that you find in this sport are fantastic. And that's really what kept me involved and got me to the point where I wanted to make sure that my son and my kids had that opportunity to play, because there's so much more to learn other than how to pass and kick the ball in rugby that will help you, throughout your professional career and beyond.
Have you ever had a parent that said they refuse to sign? They're not going to sign that? Has that ever come across your desk?
So I've never had a parent say they refuse to sign it. Most are actually pretty excited about seeing it. They're like, oh man, this is great, because one of the things at the bottom is the player signature, the parent signature, and then the coaches sign it. Because I want them to know what values you can hold me to as well. These aren't just your values. These are my values. This is a complete organization. And here's some of the coaches' asks. Here's things that I'm asking and what you can expect of me. Usually they're pretty excited about it. I've only had maybe one parent of a kid who physically was gifted. Fantastic guy. I mean, the build was there. Rarely showed up to practice for the first few months. Showed up late after that, would leave early. Wasn't interested in really doing much of the training we would do that had to do with fitness. And then his parent was upset when he didn't start on Saturday. And there was the conversation of, hey, I can give you your money back. You don't have to play. It's fine. If you want to be part of the team, everybody's held to the same standard. And I'm happy to, bring you along and teach everybody and make sure that we're all playing for that same level of effort. But if you're not giving me that effort, I don't care if you're Shaquille O'Neal out there with a bunch of 12-year-olds. I'm not putting you out there because while you might be, physically gifted, you're injuring the team culture that rugby demands. And I'm not going to put the rest of the kids out to make one person feel better about themselves. And that's brought more parents. I mean, my own son, there have been days where I benched him, and more than a handful where he didn't start. And, some of the parents who would come from football, they're like, we're not used to this. There's usually a coach and their son, and everything's built around their son, and that's what it is. And here, your son didn't even play that entire game. I was like, because it's a team effort, and don't get me wrong, Cohen's great. I think 2 years ago, he was the MVP in the state. But there are certain teams that we played that he just didn't fit the game plan as well as maybe somebody else, or, could do well. I had a game where I ended up reffing because the referee didn't show up. One of my own players back chatted me during a call and didn't like it, and I gave him a yellow card and sent him right off. I was like, absolutely not. You do not talk to the ref, period. So it's a same baseline for everybody. I don't play favorites. I don't treat people differently. And so I think that's what has attracted a lot of parents. You see this contract and things that I hold everybody to, and they see everybody being held to that same standard, and they're excited by that because you don't get that everywhere. And that might be a kind of an individual coaching thing. I can't say that that's the same at every level of rugby everywhere. But you come play for me in Richmond, and that's what you can expect.
Good one. Thank you.
Yeah, and this podcast is very heavily swayed towards the Springboks for whatever reason. But being that we have a South African here
Aren't you so
as a
lucky?
co-host, but the one thing, and I don't know, Justin, if you've seen Chasing the Sun series.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm a Springbok fan myself. My very first coach was South African,
Oh, okay.
Stephen Massey. So
Okay.
I'm
See,
a fan
Danny,
of
it's just
Springboks.
there you have it. I didn't even have to say anything. I didn't pay him any money to say that. It
There you
just
go.
came out from the heart. There we
So
go.
Right.
I kind of set up
That
myself up
settles
then.
it.
No, but in that series, and again, if anybody that's watching this episode, if you have not watched that series, you need to watch that series, Chasing the Sun. Um, you know, you're introduced to the South African coach, Rossi, and he has that same mentality, hey, this is our culture. If you don't like it, there's the door. And I remember in one of the episodes, three of the players were having just, I guess, issues with each other and not playing to the team standard. And I remember Rossi telling them, hey, you three go to the next room, work it out, and come back. If not, you're not playing. So I found, I was like, wow. I was like, and these were probably three of the best players. You would never see that in football. If you're quarterback, your wide receiver, and let's say your running back are having issues with each other and yelling at each other, you're not gonna see the coach saying, "Hey, if you don't, work it out, you're not gonna start the next game." They're gonna start.
Not just that.
So yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
I forget which game it was. Kansas City, the Travis Kelce screaming at his coach.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
played over and over and over. And I just remember being absolutely appalled that that would happen. And not just as somebody, who's a coach myself, but just, I've been so immersed in rugby and I really hadn't watched a lot of other sports for a fair amount of time. Watching that happen at that level of disrespect, it's not something you'd ever see in rugby at all. And if that ever happened on any of my teams, not because I'm important, but because it would be countercultural to what rugby is, I would immediately dismiss that player. I don't care if it was my best player on the team and that put us at a disadvantage for the next game. The culture of rugby and what the kids learn on from a values standpoint is more important than any game. And it's just, that was shocking, absolutely shocking.
Yes. And especially to one of which once he retires, Andy Reid, probably one of the best coaches to ever coach. So that, I mean, that's a whole nother level. It's one thing doing that to a coach that's loses every year and not that great coach, very bad coach, but to do it to Andy Reid, probably who's going to go down one of the best coaches to ever coach. Yeah, that was
But
shocking.
that's now the thing, is because you got all these young boys who watched that game. It was a finals, and obviously everyone's glued to the TV, and their hero is doing that. So if he does, it must be okay. They go to school on Monday thinking, I'm going to do the same as my hero, and that's just no, not in rugby. You're not going to do that. Not to your coach.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking. So so being that we're trying to bring this wonderful game of rugby, more awareness, I should say, to your typical sports fan that doesn't follow rugby. Um, what what will you say? Like, can you give us? Because I'll be honest with you, I really, being that I was more focused on international rugby, and international tournaments like the Six Nations Rugby Championship and all that.
Coming up in 3 weeks.
Yes, yes, and this will be my first one that I actually followed, so I'm very excited about that. Um, what what can you talk about like the U.S. rugby, like the Eagles? Any players that anybody that watches this podcast could keep an eye on, and the talent that America has in rugby.
So, I mean, we've got a few guys that play for Old Glory, which is the kind of the local club that we're playing for the U.S. We got to go to DC. I say we. I took my family and then some people from the local club. We got to go see USA v Scotland. Fantastic match. Now, I will say that U.S. did not do well. I mean, you looked at the score. You looked at the scrums. I mean, Scotland was just so dominant in those scrums. But I mean, part of it was field conditions, but the number of people who were there watching it 20 years ago, there maybe would have been 5% of what you saw there. So it is growing extraordinarily rapidly. It was played in Audi Park up in DC, where I think the MLS team plays, and it was pretty well attended. And it's not just that. I mean, almost anywhere there's the opportunity to play rugby. There's the Premier Sevens, which was up there, a couple months prior to that, and I took Cohen up there, and he got to be a ball boy while we were sitting there watching that game. But there's so many different teams to watch, different levels of games to be able to go check out, and there's not a huge level of difference between some of your local men's clubs in the D1 and then some of these major league rugby players. You can go watch really quality rugby in your local community, which gets you excited to then go, watch something, a little bit higher up and continue to watch some of the better teams playing. I think as you see professional rugby expanded and coming to more cities, I think it will be something that even more people get excited about. Right now, Old Glory is a 2.5 hour trip for people in Richmond. And they're pretty spaced out. If you don't live right next to something that's a rugby hub, it's tough to go see professional level rugby unless you want to make a trip. But you've got all these expanding, levels of rugby, especially at the major league level, where now you've got a team that's local that you can support. Because I mean, American sports, you're very often supporting your local team. It's whoever's there, you've grown up with, you've got to go see them, and it's a relatively inexpensive ticket to go watch. I mean, it's you can't find a lot of value like you can in rugby as far as how much you have to spend for a ticket to take your family to an event. And it is very family friendly. It's fantastic. Rugby is to the point where after a game you can go talk to the players and you can get autographs and shake hands, and because it's such a tight knit community. They're excited that people are there and helping bring up the sport that they've seen. But even in 5 years of Major League Rugby existing, I mean the number of fans that have started to attend games, you can see it just continuing to grow, and it's exciting.
Justin, sorry. Yeah. Can you just explain to us, you were talking about the difference between levels, and you were speaking about that there's not much difference between the top and the D1. Can you just
Sure.
explain to people who do not understand what those are? What is the D? What is the one?
So it's very similar to college rugby, or sorry, not college rugby, but NCAA. You have D1 teams, D2 teams, D3 teams, even in college basketball. It's your upper level and then on down. I think like Kentucky won the D2 championship this year for college rugby, and they've been pretty dominant for a while. Actually, Richmond just had a player signed to Kentucky this week who will go play for them next year, one of our high schoolers. But in the men's club level, once you get to the point where you're out of college, you can go play for your local rugby club. In D3, those are the guys who they probably practice, they'll get together every week and they'll play locally or kind of whenever they have the chance. Your D2 clubs are the ones who take it a little bit more seriously. You've got a coach who has been doing it for a while, played at a high level themselves. Training doesn't just involve the couple of times a week you're getting together as a team. You're going to the weight room, you're running around, making sure you get your cardio in. You're traveling. When I played for the Lions, we would play in North Carolina, South Carolina, DC, Colorado, I think were the national championships. You're playing all over the place. And then D1, those are your top level clubs. I know Charlotte used to be one. I think they might still be. The Raleigh Vipers, I think, are still D2. But your higher level clubs. At the time when I was playing, there was what's called Super League, and that was the closest thing you had to Major League Rugby. I think Super League still exists, but it's not the top level. Now we actually have college drafts. As of, I guess, 5-6 years ago, we started to have drafts out of college. So Major League Rugby will, look at the best players that exist in college, and very similar to an NFL draft, they'll draft those players and they'll come play to them. One of the very exciting things that Major League Rugby, I think, is doing right is they have developmental programs where they'll have like an Old Glory D20 program, or what they call Young Glory, where they really invest in those kids who are interested in playing at a high level, and they will put on clinics for them. And you've got to make the team, you've got to go try out, and they'll have 3 weeks of tryouts. They'll take the top 30 and say, we want to invite you to this clinic. But it essentially kind of gives them a dibs when it comes to drafting those players, because you've invested in them and they're there in your local community, and you spent time working with them and coaching them up. And then you get to the draft portion of pulling people from college, and if this is someone you have really invested in, you have like kind of that right of first refusal to draft them and put them on your team. So something that Major League Rugby is really doing right is, from a regional perspective, you have fans that are very organic. You're interested in this hometown hero who's been playing with you for a while, that this major league team is invested in, that they've put time and effort into, and then you can see them again still play in your hometown. Instead of getting drafted and having to play in California, where you see them maybe once or twice a year, where they're playing in your area. You've really got that opportunity to see those kids that have put a lot of time and effort locally, and then celebrate their success. And you're seeing that at the Major League Rugby level, which is fantastic. So the D3, D2, D1, that's the men's clubs. There's different levels. If you are the top of the D2, you win national championship. You have that opportunity to move your club up to the D1 here locally in Richmond. We have the James River Club. They're also affiliated with Richmond Strikers. That's the men's club. They have two. They have a D2 and a D3. So the D2 plays at the higher level, and they'll have kind of that developmental squad. that will go play, some other D3 teams. And as you do well, they'll move you up to the D2, et cetera. So there's even later in life that opportunity to continue to progress if that's something that you want to do. But there's all kinds of rugby you can see from the youth level, from pre-K kids running around and playing tag, all the way up through Major League Rugby, not just in the center of where Major League Rugby is, but all over cities and different parts in your area. So you have that opportunity. It's fantastic. Love it. Watching local games is great.
Are there opportunities for somebody like me in his 50s and really, really slow and not hard at all like he used to be to play rugby?
So in Virginia, there's two teams. There's the Virginia Gentlemen, and then there's the Cardinals. And I've played with both teams. The Virginia Gentlemen are a bunch of old boys who used to play rugby, maybe back in the day, and just don't have time to maybe get together and practice. We might get a practice or two before going to play another local old boys team. Everybody who plays, you have to be at least 36 years old or older, or 35 or older. But a lot of the guys playing are all in their, between 40s and 60s, and they're playing. If you want something that's even more competitive, there's the Virginia Cardinals, and those are the guys who do their own training for fun, and they're out there and they're pushing tires and pulling cars and swinging sledgehammers and stuff just to stay fit, and then they'll get together and play. They put together a team up at the Can-Am Games in Lake Placid, which is a USA Olympic training facility up there. And so I was reffing some games that weekend. I saw the Virginia Cardinals up there. They'll go out to Aspen and put in a team over there. So you still have that opportunity to play for as high a level rugby as you want to, even as you continue to get older. If you want to play for the Virginia Gents and you just want to say you got to run in for about 5 minutes, and then you're spent, you tag somebody else in, there's no limits to how many times you can substitute and get a breather and come back in, you can do that. If you want, to go play at a higher level with people who are your age, there's that opportunity too. So it's fantastic. We call the Can-Am Games Rugby Christmas. There's just so many teams from all over the country that come over there, and you get to see over 2 days, and just dozens and dozens of fields of rugby happening all at the same time, all over the place. And it's just, the spectator's fantastic. I hope to take, my wife and then maybe some of my family up there with me next year. It's just, to experience something like that's fantastic. It's glorious.
I have to check to see if there's something similar like that. I'm in New Jersey like that. But
Rugby, New York Sevens.
I'm not going to play. I'll be the water boy.
Yeah.
Are we happy being?
So New York Sevens happens on Manhattan Island.
Okay.
It happens usually. Well, I was just the weekend after Christmas. I was just up there reffing that as well.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Weekend after Thanksgiving. It's cold, but you have 12 fields of rugby happening all at the same time.
Wow.
And it's 7, so it's a slightly faster. It's a different style of rugby. Only 7-minute halves, 7 guys on the pitch at the same time. Really, 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 really fast paced. A minute halftime and then another 7 minutes, which is what you would see in the Olympics. The women's team that just won the bronze medal, that was a 7 style of rugby. United States has actually been really, really successful in sevens. It was like 2-3 years ago in the HSBC. We were the #1 team in the world, I think, up until the last 2 weeks when we lost it to Fiji, who is just exceptional in sevens. But it's a different style of rugby, same type of game, just faster. It's built for the smaller, faster guys, not the bigger, slower guys like myself.
So again, Justin, thank you for being here. Is there anything that you want to share that we haven't covered yet?
No, I think I've hit on most things. It's just really right now, I thank you for having me on and for even doing this podcast. I think getting rugby in front of people and having them exposed to it is what's really going to, lead to the success of rugby in the United States. Because even myself at the beginning of when I was playing rugby, I didn't want or was very hesitant to be involved because I didn't know what it was. I hadn't seen it actually happen. I just heard of it. I knew it was football without pads, and that was the extent of what I knew. And it is such a different game that it's much more cerebral. It's not big guys just smashing into each other, although that's a certainly part of it and very fun piece of it. You really have to be able to think on your toes and be able to know what your teammates are likely going to do and how you're supposed to react to individual things that happen on the pitch. And I think once you really understand, and not even every tiny rule. I mean, there are some rules in every sport that you'll just never know until it happens, and then someone explains it to you, and you're like, I didn't even know that was the thing. But just the basic parts of rugby, you understand what a knock on is, what a ruck is, what a scrum is, what's to be done in a line out, where the offside line is, and how to score. What a 50-20 is, or 50-22 is one of the newer laws. That's even exciting. They did that to bring more people have to play back instead of having kicking competitions. It's to move the ball up quickly to make it a little bit more offensive, where you're running the ball fast. There's so much more to rugby than just watching people smash into each other. And once you understand the rules, and I could sit down with somebody in one game, maybe two, and explain to them the rules, and after that they'd have a pretty decent grasp of the game. I do that often with the parents, because they'll come, their kids playing rugby, they've never seen the game. And so we'll get together, we'll watch a Six Nations game, and I'll sit in the back with the parents while the kids are all at their table watching the game. And, hey, what just happened there? Oh, okay, that was a knock on. Here's what that happened. Here's why this one wasn't a knock on. It was off the foot. You're allowed to kick forward, kind of explaining some of the rules. But once you get those really, 10 to 12 rules that you kind of understand, and then you can watch a game and really know most of what's going on. And you're excited not just to watch the guy with the ball, but to see how his team is also reacting to the other team and where they're lined up, and where you can create overloads and loops and switches, and trying to find the gaps when you want to kick, when you don't, when you're coming for a maul off the line out versus, wanting to go quick over the top. Like, there's a lot of different strategy involved that, again, in rugby, you have the coach that has to teach these aspects during the week. And then once you get to game time, it's hands off. Like, I've told you everything you need to do to succeed. Now go do those things. I'm not calling plays in between. I'm not telling you what needs to be done every 10 minutes. It is go. We'll have a chat on halftime, maybe what needs to be adjusted, what I noticed that maybe you didn't, and then you go back out there again. So it's really a lot of thinking on behalf of the player and what they know and what they have to do, and they have to take their position seriously so that the team can succeed, versus the coach telling them, here's what I want you to do in this play, go do that. All right, next play, 15 seconds later, go do this play. There's rarely any type of stoppage. It's just nonstop action. What is it? I think in an NFL football game, there's 11 minutes of actual playing time if you just go play to play and you take out the whistle time and the clock running in between. In rugby, it's 80 minutes of full on doing your job. And it's just fantastic. You're not going to find, many sports that have that level of excitement continuously other than rugby. It's great. So thank you for doing this. More people, I think, will learn about the sport, the more successful it'll be. And I think we're just at the cusp of seeing it explode here in the U.S. And I'm very excited to see it when that happens. And I think we'll see a lot of growth up until the World Cup. And then once the World Cup happens, I think, rugby is going to be one of those sports that Americans love to watch. I mean, we already do. Those types of sports are ones that we really are gravitated to. I talked to the Old Glory coach, who's from Scotland. He said, the mistake that some coaches are make is they try to bring in their style of rugby and they try to teach it to other people. And I want you to play like they do in Ireland, or over in South Africa. He said, over here in the US, you guys love to smash into each other. Like, it's very exciting. You guys are big and you like the contact. He goes, now I'm going to coach you guys to that. We're going to play to your strengths, and we're going to play that style of rugby. I mean, it's something that, you can really play to the strength of your players. And I think it's something that's really going to catch on here in America, even more so than it did or has been. And I'm excited to have been part of the kind of the lower beginnings of this. That said, I mean, the club I played for had been around since 1963. So it's been in America for a very long time. It hasn't started to reach the level of success that it has right now until recently. And it's only growing exponentially.
Well, as
Yeah,
Danny said, we were just going to do this, and in my mind, it was going to be 4 programs of, like you said, if you knock the ball forward, the other team gets the ball, it's a scrum. You got to, if the ball goes past that line, it's out, then it's a line out. 4 episodes of explaining that, and here we are at episode 19 or so. So if you want to tell your players that, you were on this podcast and they can watch and they subscribe, who knows? Maybe someone out there, watches it, and the podcast can take rugby to. It's not about the podcast; it's about the game rugby. That's why we're doing this. It's not about Danny and me talking, and it's about rugby. So whatever we can do to make rugby more famous and rugby more important and rugby in front of more eyes, we want to do.
Right.
So if you tell your players to watch, and you have been on a podcast, and they can go to YouTube and Rugby with Rifle and watch. Who knows? We might go to a game and record a game and have it on here and have you explain. Whatever we can do. Who knows what can happen?
So I
It's
watched.
such an exciting game. I mean, we can only, we can take it really far because it's such a brilliant game.
You can watch the same game 6 times and see something different every time. It's interesting when I played as a flanker, I would always watch the 7. What did they do? What can I do to be better? How can I emulate what this guy's doing? And now, as a coach and a referee, I'm watching it from different perspectives. Where did the referee place himself to be able to see that play the best? How did he make that call? What would I have done? From a coaching perspective, oh wow, I did not think about a loop and a switch like that. I actually just today was watching some rugby clips and saw this really interesting line out that I am excited to try with the kids, and kind of all this misdirection and how they got through so quickly, and just the the level of not even part of where the ball is, but just kind of in the background. There's always something to watch, and it's doesn't matter where you're looking on the field. It's exciting, especially if you've been a part of that particular play before. But it's just there's not another sport like it. I'm so excited you guys are doing this and trying to get this in front of more people, because the more people that see it, the faster it grows.
yeah. From a personal experience, if you were talk to me even just a year and a half ago about the game of rugby, I couldn't tell you the first thing about the game of rugby. So, and now I've actually fallen in love with the game because of the culture and everything. And it's just been, it's going to be exciting to see the growth of rugby in this country over the next few years leading up to the Rugby World Cup. It's really,
Dan,
truly going to be exciting.
Danny, you're from Richmond, right?
Me?
Yeah, you're in
No,
Richmond.
I'm in New Jersey.
He's
Jersey, that's right. You said that.
Yes.
Okay. I was
Yes.
going to say there's a great game this weekend, Capital Union versus Rugby Panthers, but I guess that's a little bit of a hike for you then.
Yeah, it's about 5 hour drive. So, but hey, hopefully I could drive down to Rifle again, Rifle's house again near future, and hopefully one weekend where there's a game going on and catch a game. Yeah, that would be exciting.
We can go watch an Old Glory game and kind of meet in the middle. You drive south, we'll drive north, and watch some Major League Rugby.
Perfect.
Let me know when that
Great.
happens. I'd love to attend. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, it's done.
Do
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Let's
I'm
do
really
it.
excited to do that. So, yeah. So with that, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Rugby with Rifle. Mr. Justin Smith, thank you again for being here with us. And Rifle, would you like to say anything before we end this episode?
No, I think it was wonderful. And just to have someone, like I said in the beginning, who's really involved in the nuts and the bolts and getting things done is just wonderful. So, Coach Justin, thank you from my side as well, taking your time and being with us. And we look forward to seeing how your team does and how Cohen does and how you guys progress. And yeah, I hope to see you soon again. Thank you so much. Cheers,
Thanks, guys.
everyone.
Appreciate
Thanks.
it. Thanks for having me.
So with that, again, thank you, Justin. And until next time, everybody, take care.
Cheers.
Thank you for watching this episode of Rugby with Rifle. Remember to press the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet to support this podcast.